work out. So every exam, 1/3 of the class takes part in a Viva. So 14 into 3 is 42. And that Viva is basically based on that month syllabus. So one exam every month and 14 students participate in a Viva based on previous month's analysis and what the workout that they give in written. And apart from that, there will be one term project. So 60 plus 40 is 100. There are no assignments and no marks for attendance. Clear? Any question about this? I hope it is clear. Yes or no? Okay, then if there are no more
Hello,
questions,
sir.
yes.
Sir, can you tell about the term project?
So in the term project, what we are going to do is, so in this course, you will learn about different ways to perform, to study the mechanical response of composite materials. Yes, and we will learn some formulas, we will learn some theoretical derivations about how we can do that. And some of those formulas, some of those concepts that I will advance beforehand, you have to implement that in a coding language of your choice. Okay? And so there will be, it will run through the semester where once every 2 weeks or once every week, there is going to be some formula or some concept that needs to get implemented in the software. It'll be simple programming. I don't think it'll be much more than, let's say, 10-20 lines of code that will be needed per task. Finally, once your entire code is ready, you should be able to use your code to solve mechanics of composites, complex real life problems, and everybody gets one problem which you have to solve, and you need to just document your results. You have to share your code, you have to document your results. And yes, so that is the plan. You have full freedom to do it on the programming language of your choice, Python, MATLAB, Visual Basic, whatever you like. The coding will not require any extra or superior knowledge of the coding. If you know for loop and if you know basic how to add, how to multiply numbers in the coding, the language of your choice, you should be fine. Okay?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, it will be better if you can keep the test on MS Teams. Moodle causes some problems. Last semester we faced some problems while uploading our documents on Moodle.
Okay. Uploading the documents, we'll keep it in Dropbox or something. That is fine.
Okay.
But the
Thank you, sir.
MS Teams does not allow parameterization of data, and that is problematic. So the questions come in Moodle, you will fill it up, you solve the problems. For uploading the documents, I have done this successfully for the mechanics of solids, so it will work out. I have backup, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? So only my advice is, while doing the term project, write your code in a modular fashion. Do you know what is a modular code? Anybody? Modular code means you will write functions or subroutines. You do not write everything one after the other. For example, if I want to calculate the average properties of composite materials, I should write a function to calculate the average properties. And whenever I have to calculate that average properties, I should call that function rather than copy pasting 10 lines of code every time average properties has to be calculated. So make functions, make subroutines, keep it modular. I don't think it will be too much difficult for anybody. And in any case, I think all of you have at least taken one course in programming, correct? I mean, the dual degree students must have taken courses and the MTech students have taken engineering software lab, correct?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah, so don't worry, it should not be a problem. Okay, good. Anything else? Then I think we can start. Okay, so before starting, it is important to understand the structure of the composite. It is important to understand the problem that we are trying to solve. So what you see on your screen is a semisphere made out of a composite material, which is about 1/2 meter wide. Okay. If you zoom inside to 5 centimeters, this is what you are going to see. Now, if you zoom inside more and if I start looking at 5 millimeters, likely this is what I'm going to see. Half a millimeter, this is what is visible to me. So these dots that you see here are fibers. These dots are the fibers which are through the plane of the screen, and these lines that you see are fiber which is in the plane of this slide. If we zoom even more.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So will you please use highlighter to point out?
I wanted to write also. Okay.
Okay,
So yeah, as I was saying, this is a composite part which is, let's say, half a meter wide. Okay. If you zoom inside and you start having at 5 millimeter zooming, you are going to see this. This white are your fibers. These are textile composites. This black is predominantly where there is matrix, but fiber which is perpendicular to the screen. If I zoom in further, 5 millimeters, I will start seeing this, where these white lines are the fibers, black is the matrix, and this is the reinforcement in different directions. Half a millimeter, you will see this. Again, you can clearly see the white as the fiber, black as the matrix, or gray as the matrix. If we zoom it even further, this is what we are going to see. These are fiber cross sections. Fiber is perpendicular to my screen. And if I zoom it even further and I start looking at nanometers, at the surface of the fiber, I can look at different defects. So we want to calculate the effective properties of this part, okay, based on all the microstructure information that we have. This is the challenge that we have, okay. Now, to do this, there are usually 3 steps in composite design. The first step is what is known as the micromechanics. Micromechanics is the mechanics at the constituent level. Constituent level means at the fiber and the matrix level. The next level is what is known as the mesomechanics. Mesomechanics is mechanics at the building block level. So I mix fiber and I matrix and I get a lamina. Now, what is happening inside a lamina if I don't care, if I know the properties of the different lamina and mechanics at that length scale is known as mesomechanics. And finally, I have what is the component level. If a part is made out of composite materials, that is known as macromechanics. Okay. So to do a successful design of a composite material, you will need to have knowledge of the micromechanics and the mesomechanics. The macromechanics is usually through an FE software. So we will not worry about macromechanics so much in this course, only micro and mesomechanics. Again, I'm repeating, micromechanics means mechanics at the constituent level. Constituent is fiber and matrix. If the properties of the fiber and the matrix are known, what is the property of the lamina? Okay, this is micromechanics. Once the property of the lamina is known, and if I have multiple lamina one on top of each other, what is the property of my laminate? This is your mesomechanics. In the mesomechanics, we don't care what the fiber is, we don't care what the matrix is. We just care the effective properties that has been calculated from the micromechanics. And finally, macromechanics is at the component level. So the first 1/3 of our course is micromechanics. The next 1/3 of our course is mesomechanics. Okay, very important point to note is that even though we are using the term micromechanics, it has nothing to do with the length scale micrometers. It so happens that the fiber is of the order, the radius of the fiber is of the order of microns. So it is easy to say because the order of magnitude of fiber is of micron, that's why fiber-based mechanics is micromechanics. But that is not the case. Even if I had fiber whose diameter was, let us say, 1 centimeter, and if I am studying mechanics at the constituent level, it is still micromechanics. Okay? Any questions about the 3 steps in composites design?
అదే కట్టినా అది ఎప్పుడు కైతో తెలియదు అత్తమ్మా. అసలు మనమే మనకి ఏమి ఇచ్చిన వాళ్ళు లేరు, ఏమి లేవు, మళ్ళీ ఫోన్లు చేసి మనం బట్టలు ఆడతాం కట్టుకోండి అని. ఇంకా
Yes, any questions, anybody? If it is clear, then we can go to our next. So basically, another way of looking at micro and mesomechanics of composites is that let us take the example of a textile composite. A textile composite, these are fibers which are in the perpendicular to each direction. If I look at the fiber bundle as a whole, then it is mesomechanics. If I look at fibers inside a yarn, fiber and matrix, this is micromechanics. Okay, meso, micro. And initially we are focused on micromechanics. Okay, so what is homogenization? The single most important topic while studying the mechanics of composites is what is known as homogenization. To understand what is homogenization, imagine a plot where you have on the y-axis the relative properties, x-axis is the length scale. Now, if I have, let us say, and I have a probe based on which if I can calculate that probe can travel at that small length scale and can give me the properties at that region. For example, if my probe can give me properties in the vicinity of 10 to the power minus 3 nanometers or even lower, there are going to be places where I will hit empty space, so the property is going to be very low, and there are going to be places where I'm going to hit atoms and the properties are going to be very high. So there is going to be a large variation in the property if my probe is of the size of 10 to the power minus 3 nanometers. If I increase my length scale a little bit, then I have, let's say my probe is of the order of nanometers. Even then, I'm going to hit some molecules, different molecules at different times, and then my property is going to vary based on where my probe is calculating the properties. Now, after some time, if my probe is big enough, let us say, then I am looking at my probe is of the order of micrometers. Then sometimes I will be hitting a fiber, sometimes I will be hitting a matrix. So the property, there will be some variation again. Finally, after some length scale, then my property variation will be less than 1 or 2%. And at this length scale, all the continuum mechanics that we study is valid. Before this, the continuum mechanics is not valid. So we would like to find out what is the property of a composite material such that it is a continuum. The fiber and the matrix point by point variation is not there. Okay, only then the rules of continuum mechanics that we learn in mechanics of solids or at other places will be valid. This is what we are trying to do. Okay, clear?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, for then different composites will have this study at different levels, right?
Yes. They are different length scales. So let us say my fiber is of the, if I have nano composites, then the RVE size, then the region where the continuum mechanics will start will be different as compared to some other composite. You are right. Yes.
Okay,
Is that
sir,
your
thank you.
question? So I mean, are you saying that based on the reinforcement, the length scale from which continuum mechanics will be valid is going to be different? Correct? Is that what you're asking?
Right, sir. Right, sir.
That is true. That is true. Yes. Or there is another way of looking at what is homogenization. Imagine that you have a composite material which looks like this. You have fiber and you have the matrix. The fiber, let us say, has Young's modulus denoted by EF. The matrix has Young's modulus denoted by EM. I want to replace this black and white image with gray, where everywhere there is effective properties. Okay. Now this E effective is going to be a function of EF, is going to be a function of EM, but it might be a function of other things also. Once I have E effective, then I don't need to worry about what is the point by point variation of the properties. I can apply rules of continuum mechanics. Okay, so this is our basic problem statement. We want to go from this to this. Clear? So other than EF, EM, it could be the volume fraction is an important factor. Okay, it could be that the fiber shape is an important factor. Accounting for all of that, somehow we need to say that this composite, which had fiber and matrix at different points, effectively behaves in an average sense such that the modulus is E effective. And we are after calculation of the E effective. Different books use different terms. For example, somebody uses effective modulus, somebody uses average modulus, not average, apparent modulus. It is risky to use the term average modulus because you will see that the properties of the composite is not always the average of the fiber and the matrix. It could be something else. So we will use the term either effective modulus or the apparent modulus of the composite material. This is what we are trying to calculate. In this course, first we will try to calculate E effective for unidirectional continuous fiber composites, and then we will try to calculate for short fiber composites. And even though in this slides you can see E standing for Young's modulus, but we also want to calculate the effective shear modulus or the effective Poisson's ratio, not just limit ourselves to the Young's moduli. Okay, is the problem statement clear? Understanding this problem statement is going to be very important because this is perhaps the most important problem that we will be solving in the micromechanics part. Effective modulus basically means that the response of both the systems, the one on the right and one on the left, is going to be same. Imagine that this composite material is subjected to 1% strain. Okay, so we do this. Let us say I apply 1% strain. So this is 1% strain from both the sides. So if I calculate the stress at every point, I am going to get some average value of sigma 11. Now if I build another model which has same properties everywhere and his modulus is equal to E effective, and I subject it also to 1% strain, then my average say that the Young's modulus is the effective modulus of the composite or the apparent modulus of the composite. Both of my systems should give me the same response. Okay, and now you might say, how can we calculate the point by point stresses at every point? Anybody can tell me? Let us say this information is given. How would you calculate the stress at every point? Anybody is aware of any techniques based on which we can calculate stress at every point? You could run finite element models. There are several experimental techniques based on which we can calculate. There are also several experimental techniques based by which I can calculate this sigma 11. So there are enough ways of validating our models that we are going to build. Okay. So let us start with our unidirectional composite materials. So a unidirectional composite material simplistically is going to look something like this. There is matrix and there is fiber. These fibers are continuous. That means they are infinitely long. Okay, infinitely long means through the face of my material, the fiber is not changing. Okay, there are no fiber breaks in the middle somewhere. It is long. Infinitely long does not mean that my composite material has dimensions which are infinite. Infinitely long means through the length of the composite material, the fiber is not changing. It is going through and through. And they are parallel to each other. All the fibers are parallel to each other. It's like this. Like this. So this is a representation of a composite material. If you look from the front, you are going to see this. This is the perspective view. All the fibers are infinitely long and they are continuous, they are parallel. We want to calculate the effective properties of such materials. Okay. And how can we do that? So we will make, and again, once again, if you look at this microstructure, I think you can say that the property in the 1, 2, and 3 direction, you can reasonably expect that they are going to be different because the microstructure is different. If I look in the if I look all the fibers are aligned in the one direction. So the property in the one direction are going to be different from the properties in the 2 and 3 direction where there is no fiber alignment. And we want to calculate both Young's modulus in the 1, 2 and 3 direction, and similarly the shear modulus. Okay. So first of all, we will calculate the longitudinal modulus. What do you mean by longitudinal modulus? Longitudinal modulus is the modulus of your unidirectional composite in the fiber direction. So based on this figure modulus in the one direction is your longitudinal modulus. And the modulus in the 2 and 3 direction are your transverse modulus. When I say transverse modulus, it actually means transverse to fiber direction modulus, but in short, we call it transverse modulus. So let us calculate the longitudinal stiffness. So the figure that you see is a simplification of your composite material. Okay, so these are the white is your matrix, gray is the fiber. We are assuming that this straight line, so if it is a rectangular to start with, and if I pull it in the one direction, it will still remain a rectangle, meaning that the strain in the fiber and the matrix is same. This is known as isostrain assumption. The planar cross section will remain planar. This we can say because the fiber cross section is not changing as a function of the length. If the fiber geometry is not changing as a function of the length, then the planar section has to remain plane. This is isostrain assumption. Under the isostrain assumption, strain in the one direction in the fiber is equal to strain in the one direction in the matrix is equal to strain in one direction in the composite. Okay, but the load is added. If you apply a force P, PF is taken by the fiber, PM is taken by the matrix. Okay. Is this clear? Everybody understands what is the isostrain assumption?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Should I repeat?
Sir, in the figure, the center rectangle part is the fiber and surrounding part is the matrix.
Yes, and the dotted line is we are saying that this is how it is going to deform.
Okay.
That this is a straight line.
Sir?
After deformation, this is also a straight line. Yes?
Sir, is it necessary that the fiber will always be in circular shape, or it could be a cylindrical shape rather than could it be in different shape?
It can be in different shape. For example, Kevlar fiber is kidney bean shaped. You know this Rajma? So Kevlar beans is
Yes, sir.
shape of a Rajma or like a kidney. Steel fibers are hexagonal. Carbon and glass fiber, which is 98-99% of the fiber used while making composite materials, is circular.
Okay, sir.
Okay, but in our model that we will develop, the cross-sectional shape of the fiber is not going to play a part. Okay, any more questions? If not, then let us go to our next. So now let us start with this. So P is equal to PF plus PM. Okay, and force is equal to stress into area, and stress is equal to modulus into strain. So I will get the total load is equal to area of the cross-sectional area of the fiber into Young's modulus of the fiber into strain of the fiber plus cross-sectional area of the matrix, Young's modulus of the matrix into strain in the matrix. Now, if I multiply both sides by L and I note that area, this is the cross-sectional area into length is actually your volume. Similarly, area of the fiber AF into length is the volume of your fiber. AM into L is the volume of the matrix. Okay, and we've already said that E1C, the strain in the composite, is equal to strain in the matrix is equal to strain in the fiber. So I can actually cut all of this because they are equal. And then I can also say A into L is total volume, AF into L is VF, volume of the fiber, volume fraction of the fiber, AM into L is volume fraction of the matrix. Divide both sides by A into L, I am getting this relationship. That the Young's modulus of the composite in the longitudinal direction is the volume weighted average of the properties of the fiber and the matrix. Which means that as I increase the fiber content, the modulus is going to increase linearly. Okay? And since the isostrain assumption is the basic assumption that we have made is the isostrain assumption, that is more or less reasonable. This, using this simple formula, you can calculate the longitudinal modulus of composites in a very accurate manner. Okay, good. Any questions about this derivation or about this effective property calculation?
Sir, could you again explain that isostrain assumption?
Yes. So basically, let's draw something. Okay, isostrain assumption says that, let's say I have a rectangle, okay, and inside the rectangle, the cross section is not changing. If this is my fiber, and then I'm trying to pull it like this. And this load is applied through the entire surface. Through this entire surface at this tip, this load is applied. So what can you expect? You will expect that your material is going to deform, and maybe it will become something like this. Yes? But this straight line, this line which was straight is going to remain straight. This is because across the length, this geometry is not changing. This geometry, the fiber is continuous and infinitely long. So we can say the strain in the matrix, which is this region, is equal to the strain in the fiber region. This is your isostrain assumption. This is valid only if the geometry of the fiber does not vary as a function of the length. By length, I mean this is my length. Across this length, if the fiber geometry does not change, then the strain in the fiber and the matrix have to be equal. This is isostrain assumption. Clear?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay. Based on this isostrain assumption, you can calculate the effective properties, which says that it is basically a simple rule of mixtures. If I know the volume fraction, what is the volume fraction of the fiber, what is the volume fraction of the matrix, and what is the volume fraction of what is the modulus of the fiber and the matrix, I can calculate the apparent or effective modulus of the composite in the longitudinal direction. And this formula also tells me as I increase the amount of fibers, the modulus typically is going to increase in a very linear fashion. More fibers, more modulus. Okay. Now, another point is what will happen if your fibers are of different kinds? Meaning half of my fiber is glass fiber and half of your fiber is carbon fiber. Then how can you calculate the effective properties? Anybody, what do you think will happen? Go back to the derivation. And now think that instead of only one fiber, that is, in this we only had one type of fiber whose modulus was EF. Let us say there were two fibers. One modulus was EF1, the other was EF2. Then how would you calculate the effective properties? How would this formula change? This formula.
So we will add that term to in this.
Yes. So you are going to just say plus VF, let's say VF prime is the modulus of the second fiber into EF prime, and always this condition has to be satisfied. VF plus Vf prime plus Vm is equal to 1. As long as this condition is satisfied, you can calculate the effective modulus even if there are more than one type of fiber. Okay. Those composites which have more than one type of fibers are known as hybrid composites. Okay, can I now go to the transverse to the modulus direction stiffness, transverse to the fiber stiffness? So in the transverse stiffness, basically we are trying to find a relationship between stress in the two direction and the strain in the two direction. While calculating the transverse stiffness, we are going to make what is known as the isostress assumption. Isostress assumption says that if you take a unidirectional composite material and load it in the transverse to the fiber direction, the net load taken by the fibers, don't look at this, the stress in the fiber is equal to stress in the composite is equal to stress in the matrix. While loading in the fiber direction, we said that the strain in the fiber and the matrix and the composite were same. In the transverse direction, we are making an assumption which is known as the isostress assumption, which says that the stress in the fiber is equal to stress in the matrix is equal to stress in the composite. Okay, and the displacement is the sum of the displacement. Again, if I have this, so let us, and after I apply load, I can reasonably expect that my composite will become this, will increase in length, let us say. Okay, and if the initially the length was, let us say, W or L, whatever, then this length is your delta LC. This delta LC is the sum of change in length of the fiber and the change in length of the matrix. The stress remains the same, but depending on the stiffness, the strain in the fiber and the matrix may be different when you are loading the fiber in the transverse direction. We cannot make a isostrain assumption in the two direction because as I travel in the two direction, which is this direction, the fiber geometry is changing. Here there is no fiber. Here there is yes fiber, and here again there is no fiber. When the geometry of the fiber changes in a particular direction, isostrain is no longer valid. So we are making what is known as the isostress assumption. Isostress says that the stress in the fiber is the same as the stress in the matrix is the same as the stress in the composite. Okay, clear? And we will see that this is only an assumption. This is not necessarily true, but it leads to some simple, interesting formulas. So let us look what happens. So I have a composite. I will divide the total, and I know that delta LC is equal to delta LF. Delta LC is equal to delta LF, that is change of length in fiber plus change of length into matrix. Dividing both sides by L and multiplying denominator and numerator by LF, numerator and numerator by LM, I will get something like this. Now, delta LF by LF is your strain. Okay. And LF into AF divided by L into A is your volume fraction. So, starting with this equation, I can say that, look, I know that the strains are added. So strain in the composite is equal to volume fraction of the fiber into strain in the fiber plus volume fraction of the matrix into strain in the matrix. Apply the Hooke's law, which says that E2 is equal to basically sigma 2 by EF, and you get this relationship. And we also know isostress, so we have said stress is same, so I can delete these parts and I will get this relationship, that 1 by Young's modulus of the composite material is equal to Vf by Ef plus Vm by Em. Or you can also get this formula. This is known as inverse rule of mixtures. So based on our simple assumptions like isostress and isostrain, we can say that the stress, the modulus in the longitudinal direction can be calculated using rule of mixtures, and the modulus in the transverse to fiber direction can be calculated by inverse rule of mixtures. Okay? Is this clear? And in this plot, you are
Yes,
seeing
sir.
that as I increase the volume fraction, the transverse modulus is expected to increase in a non-linear fashion, because the effective Young's modulus is inversely proportional to the fiber volume fraction, or inversely so there is a non-linear relationship, not inverse, sorry, there is a non-linear relationship. So in the longitudinal direction, as I increase the fiber content, the properties increase in a linear manner. Transverse stiffness is in a non-linear manner. Okay, clear? Is the isostress assumption clear?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, in this we have taken EF and EM. That will be same as we have taken in longitudinal direction.
Not necessarily. Some fibers are isotropic. In that case, EF will be same. In some cases, the fibers are not transversely isotropic, meaning the fiber in the length direction is different than the fiber in the transverse direction. Then we have to be careful about which Young's modulus. If I want to calculate E2, then this should actually be EF2 if my fiber is not isotropic. Matrix usually is going to be isotropic. This is E2 of this is EM, sorry. So very good question. I think this is something that you have to be very careful about. If your fiber's property is different in the 1 and 2 direction, while calculating the transverse modulus of your composite, the correct value is going to be the modulus of the fiber in the transverse direction. For example, in our previous lecture, we found out that carbon fiber has high modulus in the fiber direction, not so high in the transverse to fiber direction. So we have to put the modulus of the transverse to fiber direction while calculating the transverse stiffness of the composite. Okay, good. Any more questions?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, is modulus of fiber always greater than modulus of matrix?
Usually, that is the whole point. That's why we are making composite material. It's very unlikely, very special niche composites. In fact, I can't think of any composite material which has practical applications and the modulus is lower. No. 99.99% of the times, if you have a composite material, the modulus of the fiber is going to be more than the modulus of the matrix.
Okay, sir.
Now, look at this plot carefully and tell me, what do you think, what can you say about the benefit of adding more fibers? Like, I mean, my point is, so for longitudinal stiffness, we had this relationship where as I was increasing fibers in a linear manner, the modulus was increasing. Now, look at this plot and tell me, what can you conclude about the modulus increase as I increase the fiber?
With very small change in the volume fraction of fiber, we are getting a very good increase in the stiffness.
But this is only at, in fact, this is only at this end.
Higher concentration.
Correct. At the lower ends, by increasing fiber, you are getting very little benefit in the modulus increase of composite. I mean, if I had, let us say 20% and if I have 30% fiber, I am increasing the fiber content by 1.5 times, but the modulus increase is only going to be 5 or 10%. On the other hand, after some critical value of volume fraction of fiber, even little bit small amount of fibers will increase my modulus to a very high content. Okay. But now we have another problem. Do you think that I can make a composite with 95% fibers? Is it possible? Think of a rectangle, and in that you are trying to put circles. Can you fit in circles with 95% efficiency?
No, sir.
You cannot do that. Yes, I mean, there are limitations. You can reach 60% fiber, you can reach 65% fiber, but after that in real life, you are going to struggle. So a lot of this is actually only theoretical. I'm not going, it's very, very unlikely for me to make a composite with 80% fiber volume fraction. I will need fibers with variable diameters, and then I need some special things. So using composite materials for good properties in the transfers, at least this theorem tells us that it might not be the best idea. Okay. Now let us calculate the Poisson's ratio, or what we call nu. In that, we are assuming that let me apply a load in the one direction. In the one direction, I have isostrain. In the two direction, I have isostress. Okay. Nu 1, 2 is defined as minus of strain in the two direction divided by strain in the one direction when the material is subjected to uniaxial load in the one direction. Okay. And then taking into account these two assumptions, isostrain in one, sum of displacements in two, and noting that E2 strain in the two direction is delta W, which is the change in length in the two direction divided by W. I can say delta W is minus W into nu 1, 2 into E1. And we are saying that in the two direction, it is sum of displacement. So I am saying this is the displacement of the composite is equal to displacement of the fiber plus displacement of the matrix. I am putting a minus sign because everything is, because if I'm applying tensile load in the one direction, everything should be negative. Now, based on this, we can derive that the Poisson's ratio 1, 2 is going to vary in a linear manner, just like our Young's modulus. Okay. Very simple derivation, exactly the same like what we've done. Now, oh no. Sorry. Yeah. Shear modulus. Now, how do you define shear strain? Shear strain is defined as the tangent of this angle. 1 minute. Tangent of this angle. Correct? Is this how we define shear strain? And the assumption we are making is that the total strain in this direction is, you have to add it up. So in other words, there is going to be some shear displacement here, some shear displacement here, some shear displacement here. If I add up all the three, then I'm getting the total displacement from point 1 to point at the end. So in other words, we are saying that if I apply a unidirectional composite to shear stress, then the composite material is showing me isostress. Isostress means that the stress in the fiber and the matrix is the same. And then in exactly the same identical manner as we have calculated the longitudinal modulus, we did everything exactly the same. Other than the fact that we use shear strain and shear stress, we find out that the shear modulus is also a non-linear in fiber volume fraction. It is inverse rule of mixtures. Okay, these are just assumptions we are making at this time. I'm not saying that this is right or this is wrong. If you make an isostress assumption in shear, this is the formula you are going to get. Now it remains to be seen whether this isostress assumption is valid or not. Okay, so we can confirm by our physical intuition that isostrain is correct. We don't know whether isostress is correct or not correct, which we will validate in the due course of time. But for the time being, let us say that we have made this assumption that it is going to behave, the stress in the fiber and the matrix is going to be same, so it is isostress. Based on this assumption, we calculate that the shear modulus is actually a inverse rule of mixtures. So the shear modulus increases in a non-linear fashion as I increase the fiber content. Okay. So broadly speaking, all the different properties of a unidirectional composite are going to follow one of these two trends. Either it is going to be a linear rule of mixtures, for example, the longitudinal modulus or the in-plane Poisson's ratio nu 1 2, or it is going to follow the inverse rule of mixtures, for example, transverse modulus, shear modulus. Okay. Now we know that this linear rule of mixtures, which is based on isostrain assumption, is valid because it is, we know and we have validated that isostrain assumption is always correct. The isostress assumption is not always correct. It is just an assumption. So in the next class, we are going to learn how to make corrections to our isostress assumption and how to calculate more correct transverse and shear properties of our composite materials. One more important point is this red line and this green line, they represent the upper and the lower bound of the properties that you can get. If you have a fiber property and if you have a matrix property, no matter how your composite is made, it has to be below the upper bound, that is the red line, and above the lower bound, that is the green line. These are the two extreme values of properties that you can expect. Okay. At the tips, both of them will converge because this is VF is equal to 0. So E is equal to effective modulus is equal to modulus of the matrix. And this is EF is equal to 1. So you are getting back the properties of the fiber. In between, as you increase the fiber, the relative properties are going to change in a different manner. Red is your upper bound, green is your lower bound. So with this, I am ending today's lecture. I am open for questions. Yes, please. Anybody?
Sir, can we get those slides?
Yes.
Will you upload in the Teams?
Yes, I will upload in the MS Teams. I can see actually there are more number of students in the teams than who are auditing or crediting the course. Once I completely finish this task, I will start sharing material. Does the tip only contain fiber? Tip of what? Saksham?
Sir, in the graph, you just said that the tip where the
That is
convergence
100%.
takes.
We are saying that is volume fraction is 1. VF is equal to 1. That is
Okay.
only 100%.
Okay, sir. Means the tip of the material.
No. Wait, let me share. I was talking about this plot. In this plot, x-axis is your volume fraction, y-axis is your relative property. Now, if volume content of fiber is 0, then the effective property is the same as that of the matrix, which is this region. If the fiber content is 1, theoretically, I should get back the properties of the fiber. Okay, which is this limit. Clear? Understood? Saksham?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Anything else? If not, then I think we can wind up this lecture. Tomorrow we will discuss about the validity of the isostress assumption and how we can make corrections to our isostress assumption. And based on the correction to the isostress assumptions, then we will solve some numerical problems. Okay?
So could you please upload
Yes,
this
sir.
so we can go through the slides?
ठीक है, okay, I will upload. Okay. I wanted to upload after it was all clean, but ठीक है, I'll do. If you want it today, I'll do it. Don't worry. So Anurag, can you upload both materials? Recording, you can just go to the meetings tab. In the chat, there will be a meeting. Okay, Rahul is asking. So yeah, as I said, recording, I think you will get it in the meeting chat once I stop the recording. Rahul is asking, what if we use a sandwich material which does not follow isostrain condition? If it does not follow isostrain condition and you make the isostrain assumption, then the effective properties that you calculate will not be accurate. What else will happen? The
No, sir.
final
I mean,
answer that you get, or
how
the
do
final
we?
effective modulus that you get, either in the longitudinal or in the transverse direction, will only be as accurate as your assumptions are. If your assumption is 100% correct, then your answer, you can expect it to be 100% correct. If your assumptions are not 100%, they are only an assumption, you will only get an approximate answer.
So I mean, then how do we tackle that condition?
And we'll do that tomorrow. Na? Tomorrow we will find out that the isostress assumption is not a great assumption. There are specific reasons when it's not going to work. And when the isostress assumption does not work, how should we calculate the properties in a more accurate manner? That is tomorrow's lecture. Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, then we'll see each other tomorrow. Tomorrow we have 2 hours. Okay? Okay, then
Yes,
bye.
sir.
Bye, bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.